On the sidelines of this year's APEC summit in Peru, President Yoon is set to hold separate talks with the Chinese president as well as the leaders of the U.S. and Japan amid recent geopolitical changes. U.S. President-elect Trump's transition team is reportedly planning to end the Biden administration's trademark EV subsidy, fueling Korea's concerns over uncertainty under the Trump leadership. Meanwhile, Seoul was put back on the U.S. monitoring list for its foreign exchange policies. The Greenbook projects the economy to recover at a gradual pace amid increasing uncertainties and omits the description suggesting signs of recovery in demand at home. It's November 15th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon Suk Yeol's diplomatic agenda in Peru includes key bilateral interactions with his global partners, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, coming at a crucial time. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young files this report from Lima.
President Yoon Suk Yeol will hold a bilateral summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday and set out ways to enhance trilateral cooperation with the leaders of the United States and Japan amid various geopolitical changes in recent weeks. This comes as the South Korean leader attends the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Lima, Peru. According to Yoon's Principal Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho, the South Korean and Chinese leaders will have their first sit-down in 2 years.
Since the Korea-Japan-China summit held in Seoul in May, both South Korea and China have expanded communication and exchanges at various levels. Tomorrow, the two leaders are expected to discuss various measures to promote economic cooperation and people-to-people exchanges between the two countries, as well as exchange in-depth views on regional situations, including the Korean Peninsula.
Also on Friday, Yoon will hold a much-anticipated trilateral summit with US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The three sides will review progress on their agreements made at Camp David last year, which agreed to institutionalize their three-way cooperation on deterring North Korea's nuclear and missile threat and handling security and economic challenges in the region. The leaders will meet amid concerns that the incoming Trump administration in the US may not maintain the trilateral partnership, and as tensions rise over North Korea's deployment of troops to aid Russia's war against Ukraine. A senior official told reporters in Lima that the three leaders may set out measures to preserve the Camp David framework, possibly with the launch of a trilateral secretariat. Yoon and Ishiba are also scheduled to hold a separate meeting on Saturday to discuss ways to develop bilateral relations ahead of next year's 60th anniversary of normalizing diplomatic ties. While Yoon's office is arranging a one-on-one with Biden, the official suggested a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump is likely to be difficult in the coming days, as it has been less than a fortnight after his election, and as the incoming administration is currently focusing on domestic affairs. During his 8-day trip to Latin America, Yoon will hold summits with the leaders of Peru, Vietnam, Brunei and Canada, and likely call for solidarity in curbing North Korea's military cooperation with Russia. Engaging in back-to-back diplomacy, Yoon's office says the South Korean president aims to hold bilateral meetings with around 10 world leaders at the APEC summit in Peru and the G20 conference in Brazil. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Lima.
Beyond bilateral interactions, the South Korean president is poised to partake in the multilateral APEC meeting, noting the importance of the group's role in protecting multilateral trade. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon explains his agenda.
The Asia-Pacific Economic Forum Summit starts on Friday in Lima, with President Yoon Suk Yeol taking part in the world's biggest economic cooperation body meeting. Yoon will kick things off with an unofficial discussion with all participating leaders.
President Yoon will emphasize the importance of a free and stable trade and investment environment and propose cooperative measures to reduce disparities among different social groups and promote shared benefits.
Specifically, Yoon will first note the importance of APEC's role in protecting multilateral trade, with South Korea leading calls to strengthen negotiation capacities for members. Yoon will also emphasize empowering vulnerable nations to seize opportunities, contributing to sustainable growth and enhancing AI capabilities for developing nations. And he will also use the opportunity to address North Korea issues.
President Yoon will also stress that the illegal military cooperation between North Korea and Russia poses a significant challenge to the rules-based international order and undermines APEC's forward-looking cooperation. He will strongly urge North Korea and Russia to cease their military collaboration.
Yoon will then attend the APEC Business Advisory Council lunch before heading to the APEC CEO Summit, where he will deliver a keynote speech. The CEO Summit will include a handover ceremony with the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry Chair and SK Group Chair, Che Tae-won, becoming the next chair. After that, Yoon will join the dinner gala hosted by the current APEC chair, Peruvian President Dina Boluarte. On the morning of the 16th, Yoon and other APEC leaders will go on a retreat where they will be able to exchange ideas in a more comfortable setting, where he will also be handed the chairmanship of APEC. He is set to receive a varayok, a rod given to leaders in the Incan culture, by the Peruvian president as part of the handover ceremony.
President Yoon will outline the direction APEC should take and emphasize Korea's responsibility and commitment to contributing as next year's host country. Notably, he will highlight Korea's leadership in advancing regional efforts to promote digital transformation for small businesses and vulnerable groups.
President Yoon will also have the opportunity to share the vision for the APEC summit next year, which will be held in Gyeongju City, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the fate of the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act under the incoming Trump administration has been rendered bleak, as sources say plans are in the works to repeal it. Shin Ha-young explains what this could mean for South Korea.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team is reportedly planning to end Biden's electric vehicle tax credit, according to Reuters, which cited two sources with direct knowledge of the matter. The report states that the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides EV subsidies of up to $7,500 will be killed. If the EV tax credit is repealed, it is expected to hit South Korea's EV and battery industries, which are already experiencing a slowdown in demand. Though he did not spell out specific policies, Trump frequently criticized Biden's EV mandate and promised to end it. As IRA requires the vehicles to be manufactured in the U.S. and includes certain requirements for critical minerals and battery components, current automaker Hyundai and Kia have few vehicles that qualify for the full IRA subsidy. But sources say since they have been investing heavily in building U.S. facilities to meet those requirements, a repeal could significantly disrupt their plans. In response, one expert stressed the need to quickly develop strategies to prepare for uncertainties and minimize the negative impacts of Trump's second term.
Weakening or repealing the Inflation Reduction Act could increase U.S. companies' dependence on China, which would undermine the Trump administration's strategy to reduce reliance on China. South Korea should clearly communicate these risks to the U.S. and emphasize that such a decision should be made carefully.
Regarding the Reuters report, South Korea's Trade Ministry said it has been monitoring potential changes to U.S. policies, but no decisions have been made regarding the IRA. Meanwhile, South Korea has been added to the U.S. Treasury Department's monitoring list for its foreign exchange policies just a year after it was removed. In a report to Congress on Thursday, the department included South Korea on its list of 7 countries. China, Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam, and Germany are the other nations. South Korea was excluded from the monitoring mechanism last November for the first time since April 2016. The list addresses concerns regarding potential currency manipulation. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In the latest monthly economic evaluation, the Finance Ministry opted for comparatively cautious diction in describing the state of the country's economic direction. Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea's economy continues to recover at a gradual pace in light of growing uncertainties due to global economic conditions and geopolitical risks. That's according to the latest Economic Greenbook, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. Compared to the previous month's report, the government has shifted its assessment from a recovery trend to a gradual economic recovery. And it's the first time in 7 months that a description stating that there are signs of recovery in domestic demand has been taken out. This adjustment is seen as a reflection of the country's third-quarter GDP growth of only 0.1% and the subsequent downward revisions of South Korea's growth forecast by major institutions. Key indicators of industrial activity also showed signs of a slowdown in September. Industrial output declined by 0.2% month-on-month, and the services and construction sectors also contracted. Retail sales, an indicator of consumer spending, were down by 0.4%, despite the government's expectations for an increase due to recorded growth in credit card spending and domestic car sales, as well as the Chuseok holiday. That being said, consumer sentiment did show a slight improvement, indicating a more optimistic outlook on the current economic situation. While domestic demand has shown mixed signals, exports continue to perform well on the back of the booming auto and IT sectors. Exports increased by 4.6% in October, marking 13 consecutive months of growth. The government maintained its assessment that inflation is stabilizing as consumer prices rose by 1.3% year-on-year in October. It also emphasized uncertainties arising from global economic conditions and geopolitical risks, especially with regard to the results of the U.S. presidential election.
Given the uncertainties surrounding the new U.S. administration's pledges, it's difficult to quantify the potential effects on our economy. However, it's important to note that while there are risks, there are also opportunities.
To address these challenges, the government plans to strengthen its response system in finance, trade, and industry, and provide targeted support to vulnerable sectors such as construction and small businesses. 문혜련, Arirang News.
A former counselor at the North Korean embassy to Cuba, Lee Il-kyu, who defected to the South last year, has revealed confidential diplomatic cables that show Pyongyang's relentless drive to counter global pressure on its human rights record. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil has this report.
Counselor Lee Il-kyu described the revelation as a North Korean version of WikiLeaks. The 12 diplomatic cables dating from 2016 to 2023 carry direct orders from leader Kim Jong-un to overseas workers aimed at countering global criticism of Pyongyang's human rights record.
I decided to release these documents because I want the world to see that the horrific human rights abuses in North Korea lead directly back to Kim Jong-un. He's not ignoring the international criticism. He's fully aware of it and actively directing strategies to deflect and suppress it.
Take a look at one example. A February 2020 diplomatic cable states, the enemy has malicious political intent to overthrow our country with barbaric sanctions, underscoring how the regime sees international human rights pressure not as a genuine concern, but as part of a broader geopolitical struggle. We asked Counselor Lee why Kim Jong-un is so concerned about international criticism on human rights, given that information is so restricted in North Korea that residents are unlikely to ever hear it.
North Korea works tirelessly to block external information, but many channels still leak foreign news back into the country. When overseas workers return, stories of international condemnation of human rights inevitably spread among citizens, creating pressure on Kim Jong-un.
Professor Lee Jae-myung warns Counselor Lee's disclosures, while purposeful, may have unintended effects.
While this can raise human rights awareness, it also leads to tighter control over the elite. As long as Kim Jong-un remains in power and feels insecure, major improvements are unlikely.
Unification Minister Kim Yong-ho said the government plans to intensify multifaceted efforts to bring real improvements to North Korea's human rights situation. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
In local politics, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung has been found guilty of election crime. The Seoul Central District Court on this Friday ruled that he had shared false information in the process of disputing corruption allegations while on the presidential campaign trail. Lee denied acquaintance with a man involved in a land development scandal in Seongnam during a media interview in 2021 and also reportedly made false claims during a related parliamentary audit. Accordingly, the court handed him a 1-year prison sentence, suspended for 2 years. Should this ruling stand, Lee looks to lose his legislative seat and be barred from partaking in elections for 5 years. Lee has vowed to appeal today's verdict. Tourism officials here in Seoul are offering foreign residents and travelers to the capital city the chance to indulge in a one-day cultural activity free of charge. Our Park Go-nu partook in one such event.
Experiencing Korean culture to the fullest for free. This is possible thanks to one-day classes taking place regularly at Seoul Cultural Lounge in Central Seoul that's been open since June this year. Here, foreigners living in or just visiting South Korea have a chance to savor their favorite type of Korean culture, from K-pop and K-beauty to traditional culture. Once a month, Seoul Cultural Lounge holds a special class, and for November, it's Taekwondo, Korea's national sport. On this day, around 20 foreigners, registered on a first-come, first-served basis, had the opportunity to learn techniques and even how to spar. I received the same uniform that's given to the participants for free as part of the one-day class. What usually takes about several weeks to master, this class allows you to be quite proficient in Taekwondo techniques that you've learned in just 1 hour. Check this out. Yup. Ha. Ha. Foreigners were able to learn more quickly thanks to the class being taught in English with the help of an interpreter.
So you get the chance to, try the sport yourself, and then it was nice to learn from an actual master, of course. Yeah, so it was fun.
It was a really good experience. I loved it. It's completely different than just visiting the country. Like we can do a total new experience, but I never did before. So.
Alongside the special classes, regular classes are also other options. Those classes include learning the latest Korean slang while watching K-dramas and movies, and coloring frames with traditional palace designs.
Like other programs where you can do art or creative things, and sometimes you have to pay a lot of money. So to get to do really cool art for free is something that I really like.
Over 8,000 foreigners from 78 countries visited this place already. They look very happy and say they will brag to their friends about their experiences after returning to their homes.
With several popular classes already underway, the Seoul Tourism Organization plans to keep opening more intriguing classes down the road. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Time now for our weekly arts and culture segment, and that means we have our culture correspondent, Song Yoo-jin, here in the studio. Welcome, Yoo-jin.
Hello, Jung-min.
What do you have for us today?
Well, Jung-min, today I would like to introduce a new policy that took effect exactly 2 weeks ago at one of South Korea's most popular tourist spots. And the reason why I wanted to bring this topic to our arts and culture this week is because it's fairly well known among locals, but it seems that many international visitors aren't familiar with it yet. So let's first take a look. Swarms of visitors are now a common sight in Seoul's Bukchon Hanok village. Tourists flock here to see the centuries-old Hanok houses up close. While this historic village delights tourists, life for residents is far less pleasant.
The noise, especially from rolling suitcases, disrupts our mornings and nights, especially since Hanok houses aren't well soundproofed. There's also the problem of littering, and shockingly, some visitors have even relieved themselves near our homes. Others have walked into our house, uninvited, and taken photos inside.
These issues, known as overtourism, have taken a toll, causing the village's population to drop by 27.6% over the past decade. To address this, the government in July this year designated Bukchon as Korea's first special management area under the Tourism Promotion Act.
Since 2018, we've set specific visiting hours for the village, and local residents have worked hard to enforce them. But without legal backing, they were often ignored. Now, with a legal framework in place, we can impose fines for violations.
The village is now divided into 3 color-coded zones based on overcrowdedness, with the strictest regulations in the red zone. So it's past 5 p.m. and I'm here in the red zone of the Bukchon Hanok village, where visitors aren't allowed to enter between 5 p.m. and 10 a.m. Now this area has been one of the most congested spots in the village because visitors come here to take photos in front of traditional Hanok houses. At 5 p.m., monitoring personnel take to the streets, guiding visitors out of restricted areas. The curfew applies to those simply sightseeing, with exceptions made for those visiting stores, museums, or staying in Hanok accommodation within the zone. Residents say they're already feeling a change.
We're thrilled as we can finally have peaceful mornings and evenings.
Tourists we spoke to understood the policy's purpose but suggested clear guidance.
People, there's supper time till and have time to sleep and rest. So yeah, I think it makes sense. If there are hundreds of people around here, they couldn't rest. So yeah.
I think we could have done it if we Googled it a bit more. But I mean, like there could be a sign like further outside, so we wouldn't have like walked already into the street.
However, not everyone is on board. Some local business owners worry about the impact on their livelihoods.
The district office needs to communicate more with local business owners. Instead of strict daily restrictions, a more flexible approach, like limiting visitors during specific periods, might work better.
As overtourism becomes a growing issue worldwide, Bukchon Hanok Village's strategy offers a way to balance visitor experience with residents' quality of life.
So Eugene, as you mentioned, over-tourism is certainly not just a challenge for Korea. So how are other countries tackling this problem?
Well, I would like to introduce 2 notable examples, one in Venice, Italy, and the other in Kyoto, Japan. Now, starting with Venice, it became the first city in the world to introduce an entrance fee to visitors. So from April to July this year, tourists were required to purchase a one-day ticket costing €5, which is about $5.30. And the city plans to bring back the policy next year, with the fee doubling to €10. Meanwhile, in Japan, Kyoto's famous Gion Geisha district has also been grappling with littering, harassment of geishas, and overwhelming crowds. So in response, the city has restricted access to certain alleyways since April this year, too.
And turning back to Bukchon, are there any additional measures the district office is planning to prevent over-tourism?
There actually is. So starting from January 2026, the district is going to restrict the passage of charter tour buses, and this is to address illegal parking and traffic congestion. So the restrictions will be in effect year-round, including weekends and holidays, covering a 2.3-kilometer stretch of roads from Bukchon-ro 5길 to Changdeok-gung 1길. And exceptions will be made for commuter buses, school buses, and also neighborhood shuttle buses as well. But visitors can still park the buses outside and take a look around the Hanok village on foot. And although not legally enforced, the village is encouraging visitors to avoid coming on Sundays, designated it as a rest day for the alleyways.
All right, Eugene, thank you for the information and thank you for your report.
Thank you.
The hot sun shined today and it felt warm like spring. The temperature exceeded 20 degrees Celsius and this warm weather will continue tomorrow. However, between late afternoon and Sunday dawn, it will rain in the central parts of the country and the Jeollado provinces. The expected amount of rainfall is up to 30 millimeters in Gangwon-do province and up to 5 in Jeollanam-do province and the Chungcheong-do provinces. About 5 centimeters of snow could accumulate in Gangwon-do province, where temperatures are low. After this rain stops, the cold air will come down and they will get cold rapidly. Tomorrow, Daegu and Gyeongju will start off at 12 degrees, Chuncheon 10 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 21 in Daejeon, Daegu and Gyeongju, Gwangju 22 degrees. Next Tuesday, the morning temperature in Seoul will drop to below zero and it will be cold. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Galbijjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait. Did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
웃긴 신들도 많이 있고 약간 감동적인 장면도 많이 있기 때문에 정말 기분 좋게 볼 수 있는 그런 뮤지컬이라고 생각해요.
진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지? 김치?
종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도, 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지.
제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기.
한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing issues into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. The 2024 APEC summit, taking place from November 10th to the 16th, is set to bring together leaders from across the Asia-Pacific region under the theme Empower, Include, and Grow. As the global economy faces new challenges, the summit will focus on enhancing trade and investment, fostering innovation and digitalization, promoting sustainable development, and addressing key environmental issues. Attention is focused on South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol's opportunity to strengthen the nation's position in the region and explore avenues for economic growth while contributing to the collective goals of APEC. For more on this, we're joined by Jorge Heine, former ambassador of Chile to China and research professor at Frederick S. Party School of Global Studies at Boston University. Welcome to the program, Ambassador.
Thank you.
And also joining us is Lee Jae-myung, professor at the Division of International Studies at Koongju National University. Thank you for joining us, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let us start with Ambassador Heine. We are aware that APEC has been established to strengthen economic cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. So in light of growing concerns about protectionism nowadays, what do you think is the role of APEC in this geopolitical landscape, and how important is the latest summit in addressing those concerns?
Well, I will say this. APEC has played a very important role in fostering trans-Pacific trade. It's been around now for some 35 years. The Asia-Pacific has been for a long time the most dynamic region in the world in terms of growth, in terms of trade, in terms of investment. And it brings together APEC brings together some of the largest economies in the world, nearly 40% of the world's GDP. So there is no question that it is an extremely important entity. Second, the APEC summit brings together none other than the presidents of the United States and of China, the two most powerful leaders in the world. So if we're only for that, it immediately becomes one of the most significant summits, they're called meetings really, held this year. The third point I would like to underscore, though, in a bit of a more critical tone, is that the main purpose of APEC, which has been to foster free trade across the Pacific, in the course of the past 2 years, has been seriously hampered by the rise of protectionism that you alluded to. So this particular meeting in Lima, what is being emphasized are, I would say somewhat secondary issues like inclusivity and connectivity and, digital entities and so on, all of which are fine and they stand on their own, but they are not part of the central purpose of APEC, which is to foster free trade. There's been a long-standing project within APEC, which is the FTAAP, the Free Trade Area of the Asia-Pacific. And the viability study for the FTAAP was delivered in Lima. The last time APEC meeting took place in Lima, that was in 2016. But not much progress has happened on that front. So my concern is that APEC is a bit stuck right now, and it needs a new impetus. And I hope we get some signals out of Lima on that, but I'm a bit skeptical that we'll see that.
Right, so let's hope to see a breakthrough on that front in this year's APEC summit. Now, Ambassador, what are the main agenda items for discussion at this APEC summit, and what's the background behind these issues?
Sure. Well, so for the reasons I said, the main issues that have been put front and center on the agenda are somewhat lateral issues, like sustainability, like inclusivity, like digital connectivity. And, they deserve attention, they are important, we need to work on them and so on. But I am concerned about this, somewhat static nature of free trade across the Pacific. Incredible as it may sound, studies indicate that this year and coming years, the Asia-Pacific region will grow at a lower rate than the world economy. Now, this was not the case in the past. In the past, APEC would always grow, APEC economies would grow at a higher rate than the world economy. Now, what does it indicate? There is a lack of dynamism. So this is something we ought to work on, and I would certainly hope that, some signals come out of Lima in that regard.
Right, let's hope for that. Now, also, let's bring in Professor Lim to the conversation. President Yoon, who landed in Peru today, is set to deliver a keynote speech on Friday. What key points do you expect President Yoon to emphasize regarding South Korea's role as a global pivotal state?
Sure. First of all, let me just, express my deep agreement with Ambassador Heine's comments, wonderful comments. Again, the APEC, this is a mechanism that can include many countries in this huge region, and then economically, politically, this is a very rare chance for the Asia-Pacific countries to gather together with the United States and China. However, as Ambassador Heine already pointed out, it's a kind of in a static situations, and mainly I think the main reason behind that is I feel like again the U.S.-China strategic rivalry because of intensified competition between these two superpower, all the kind of dynamics or atmosphere probably changed it in a little negative direction. However, South Korea, again, this country is one of the top trading countries in the world, and because of the openness of our country's economy, South Korea has been able to, again, to climb up the ladder of the development. So South Korea is one of, I'm pretty confident I can say this. Again, the South Korea is and should be a big advocate of the free trade. So having said that, I will guess, again, the President Yoon also will highlight the importance of the free trade and open economy. And especially we now have the election result from the United States. However, even though Mr. Trump or whoever going to be sitting in the White House and whatever those more like a protectionist policies can be made by the American president, but still, again, the APEC, the member states, we have 21 countries, and we can do more. So I'm pretty sure President Yoon can point out that point. And another point I'd like to highlight is, again, the security situation, especially North Korea. They now got involved in the war in Ukraine, so the security situations in Europe is now more directly intertwined with the security issues of the Asia-Pacific or in the Pacific. So we definitely need a more understanding and support from global South countries or Asia-Pacific countries. So I guess, again, the President Yoon will highlight that part as well.
Right. Thank you for pinpointing out for us the important topics. Now, this visit by President Yoon marks his first trip to South America since his inauguration. Ambassador Heine, what kind of role do South American countries then expect from South Korea as a global pivotal state?
Well, I will say this. In South America, and particularly in Chile, my own country, but also elsewhere, we have come to realize more and more that we are living in what has been called the Asian century. That Asia has been rising, that Asia has been growing. It's a very dynamic region, and that our progress will depend in years to come, to a very significant degree, to the ties we established with Asia. And Chile has been in the forefront of this. 40% of Chile's exports go to China, 60% of our exports go to Asia. And Chile, of course, has also been in the forefront in the sense of relations with South Korea. Chile and Korea signed the first Asia-Latin America Free Trade Agreement as far back as 2002. President Kim Jong-un and President Lagos played a very important role in that. So let me underscore that in this situation of growing protectionism in the United States and in Europe, Korea can play a very important role in fostering free trade and fostering greater exchanges between Latin America and Asia. Until now, there's been a lot of attention to the role of China and to the role of India in Latin America. And it seemed to me that there's much room for South Korea to play a much more high-profile role than it has until now. And I would hope that after this visit of the president, we will see additional visits and more projects going on. We are all great admirers of what South Korea has done, how it has emerged from being a very poor and underdeveloped country in the 1950s to the very significant industrial power it is today. And we see a lot of complementarities between the South Korean economy and our own economies.
Right, so let's look after those developments in Peru. Now, President Yoon Suk Yeol will also be announcing his commitment as the APEC chair for next year. Professor Lim, what kind of outcomes can we expect for the host country as the host country of APEC in 2025?
Well, I think we can suggest many important things. Again, as Ambassador Hani already pointed out, I know, again, the Chile was the first country who got the FDA with the South Korea. So, and some other, again, the Peru, of course, we got an FDA with the Peru as well. And we are pretty much interestingly watching how the CPTPP goes on, which is more like led by Japan. But anyhow, all this trade issue is definitely one of the top agenda. But not only just free trade. I think we should, and I think we will, add more important aspects in the upcoming 2025 APEC meeting in Gyeongju. For example, again, the climate change. I know in Latin America, for example, Brazil or many other countries will be very much, struggling with the growing intensity of the natural disaster because of the climate change, rapid climate change. So climate change, of course, now we have President-elect again, Mr. Trump. He already mentioned that he will be withdrawing again from the Paris Agreement. Again, but still, there are many other countries who definitely want to make a commitment in the climate action. So definitely climate change can be one of another top agenda we can bring in again to the APEC, upcoming APEC. Or as the anchor, you pointed out at the beginning of the show, digitalization or all this AI or so-called the fourth industrial revolution related trend is accelerating. However, there are certainly some gaps between the very rich developed countries who got a technology or who got the capital power and some other countries who are, again, still, on the process of the developing. So we need to narrow down this gap, again, between the developed world and then less developed world in terms of digitalization as well, digital digital transformation or digital revolution. So those kind of things should be, and I think it can be, again, another important agenda in the upcoming APEC meeting. Or like a food security issue, cyber security issue. There are many other emerging security issues as well. And lastly, some more like a culture. Again, as we all know, Korean cultures, even the literature, are pretty much popular now worldwide. So those kind of more like a lighter culture agenda can be exchange kind of things, or tourism. Those things also, I think, can be very much freely discussed again between the member states in the Gyeongju. Gyeongju is a beautiful city for the tourism too. Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor. Now, meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has also arrived in Peru today to attend the APEC. Ambassador, given the potential for President Trump to reassert his pressure on China, can you tell us what are the implications of the growing tensions between the U.S. and China for APEC?
Sure. Well, to start with, there is no guarantee of this, but it's a rumor that's been floating around. But some people have mooted the possibility of the United States leaving APEC, given that APEC is committed to free trade. This is something President Trump does not believe in. As you know, the United States under President Trump left the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In January of 2017, the United States negotiated the TPP for some 8 or 9 years, and it took a lot of doing. And then, in the first few days of his presidency, President Trump left it. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying it will happen, but maybe it will happen. So there is much at stake here. And what I find interesting is that APEC embodies multilateralism. And obviously, again, this is something in which President Trump does not believe in. He believes in bilateral relations. He believes in unilateral action. So, there are lots of questions floating in the air in terms of the future commitment of the United States to APEC. Obviously, this stands in contrast to the Chinese position, which is basically in support of free trade and in support of multilateralism. So it seems to me that is a key issue that will, be present when we talk about U.S.-China relations in the context of APEC.
Right. Now, on the sidelines of the APEC summit, we expect President Yoon to sit down with President Xi Jinping for the first time in 2 years. Professor Lim, what do you expect from the talks?
Well, recently we got some positive signals from Beijing. For example, visa issue, it was like a kind of improved. So it looks like China also is trying to make the bilateral relationship with us, again, with the South Korea, more toward a more positive direction. Of course, Korea-China relations has been always, in a pretty friendly relationship, even though we did have some kind of, up and downs. But fundamentally speaking, China is our largest trading partner, and we do have so many dense, human networks between the two countries. So the relationship cannot be really hostile. So, through this bilateral meeting, bilateral summit between the President Yoon and President Xi, I think they will try to make the mood atmosphere more positive. And of course, that kind of leadership is necessary, again, for the security concerns as well. Again, even though the APEC per se, it is not about the security issues. Rather, again, it's more like socio-economic mechanism for the cooperation among the member states. However, still all this geopolitical, geostrategic risks are pretty great these days because of the two wars in Europe and Middle East. And again, the North Korea is now related to the war in Ukraine. So definitely China's role is I cannot emphasize enough how important China's role is. So I'm pretty sure the President Yoon is more than willing to just talk about this issue with the President Xi.
Right. And alongside China, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol is also expected to sit down with Japan's new Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba. With Ishiba set to hold a series of bilateral talks on the stage, what should we focus in terms of outcomes?
Well, President again-elect Mr. Trump is coming in, and then President Biden is now leaving the White House. So I think this is the last chance for the three countries' leaders, again, the Biden, Yoon, and then Ishiba, to gather together again before President Biden is leaving White House. So definitely they will be interested in, again, how would you say, making sure, again, all this trilateral cooperation is very much important for the regional security, but not only just regional security, for global security. So I'm very sure they'll be emphasizing the importance of the trilateral cooperation for security reasons, but not only for security reasons, for economics too. Again, the three countries' cooperative action is pretty much necessary and required in this region. So I guess again the three leaders will reconfirm again the importance of the trilateral cooperation. And again, the Prime Minister Ishiba, his political position in the domestic political landscape is not that stable yet, but through this kind of diplomatic events, hopefully again his the supporting rate can be more, upgraded too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, what about Ambassador Heine? Prime Minister Ishiba said to hold a series of talks with South Korea, U.S., China. What would you expect in terms of outcomes?
Well, I would expect some signals of, basically dialing down the tensions that we have seen in the region. If you look at that part of the world, we have some of the most, significant flashpoints in geopolitics. We look at, of course, the situation in North Korea for the reasons that have been mentioned. We look at the situation of Taiwan. We looked at the tensions in the South China Sea. So these are all, very significant issues. And it seems to me it is very important to dial down those tensions. We're living in a very troubled world, and it is important that leaders provide the right signals so that these flashpoints do not escalate and lead to major conflicts.
Right. So let's hope these kinds of discussions would pave the way in making a breakthrough to bring peace in the world. We have to wrap up our discussion, I'm afraid. Many thanks to Ambassador Heine and Professor Lim for sharing your expertise and time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Now, that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지.
제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기.
한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국.